Oh, we're going. Okay. I missed my signal. All right. Today, we're going to talk about 5 signals that you can use to help you understand who your best customers are, help you convert more of them to paying customers, and help keep you around longer. With that, I'm Peter.
Hello, and I'm Kate.
So, Kate, today we're going to talk about 5 signals that you can get from your product to help you make more revenue up front, keep your customers around longer, and really understand who you should be going after in terms of your marketing and product work. And those 5 things are going to touch on different teams, including your sales, marketing, support, product, and success teams. And so with that, I thought we could start by talking about signals that sales might want to look for in the product. If you're doing like product-led sales in particular, we're talking about product signals that a sales team would look for. What would that be, and how would they use that, would you say?
Well, the reality is you probably actually need to know the activation signals. And for those who don't know activation or not familiar with it, it's essentially in your product where you kind of work out what are the 4 or 5 important features that need to be used or actions that a user does so that they can then get that aha moment or where that moment where they go, oh, I see how this product works. Oh, this is how it can work for me. So you need to be getting those signals. And if you actually get those signals, you then can then segment to those who are highly activated, i.e., for example, they've used 5 out of 5 of your desired features at 100%, view to those that haven't. And so the ones that are really activated, you say, hey, great, they're probably going to get over the line by themselves. The ones that have really hardly touched the thing, then you probably go, well, I'm probably going to push a barrow uphill. It's the ones in the middle. And so why wouldn't you give those better primed to your sales team? Because I'm assuming, Pete, I don't know a sales team that's not running fast. Do you know of any sales teams that aren't running fast and really only want to talk to the ones who are more likely to get a sale?
Maybe you want the easy sales. No, I don't know many of those really that are standing still for too long. But I think what comes to mind when we talk about this in particular is we've had a lot of conversations around, what level of activation should you get engaged at? And as you said before, if they're at 100%, it's almost one of those things like just get out of the way and let them close themselves, right? Like if it's self-serve enough and they don't need to get on the phone with sales, I would say anybody that's at 100% activation, you can probably just take your hands off and watch. And if you see that,
how many do you know that are really at 100%? I mean,
well, that's the other thing.
That's a reasonably rare beast, isn't it?
The likelihood of that happening. Yes, I think that fair point. Fair point. And, I wish there was a way to sort of prescribe and say, once they're in this band, between 80 and 90%, that's when you reach out. But I think it's different for every product and really, every buyer, but that's a bit too complicated here. But, I think you mentioned it before, what's that middle look like? And so, the companies that we've been talking to, trying to understand, what does activation really look like? What does good, healthy activation look like? And then the second thing is, where should we really get involved? And, it might be at 50% activation. It might be at 75. It's hard to know until you get into the product, but
but a good question to ask in that instance, though, is what is the best looking model for this? And so at Proforma, when we had the Proforma product, we didn't just make an arbitrary, we think it's these 5 things. We actually talked to a lot of customers and in support. We got a very good insight of how people onboarded. And we also had a product analytics tool, so it actually helped us as well. But we got to know, you knew in a form builder, if a person has built a form, published it, it has been filled in multiple times, you know that the person's basically got the concept of the product in terms of our product. So we knew they were onto a good thing. And so it was much, much easier to talk to people confidently once you actually knew the bits they'd tried and the bits they hadn't tried.
Yeah. And I think where that might be like the most exciting for me anyway is if I have to do sales, which I'm not a strength.
Everybody's on sales, Pete. I don't care. Everyone's on sales. I don't care what anyone says.
All right. I mean, that's okay. I won't disagree with you. But what I will say is if I'm not a super confident salesperson, let's say, I don't think it's where I shine necessarily. But if I can go in with this kind of signal and to say, here's what they've done in the product, and here's how far activated they are, and yes, they have discovered the value or know they have not, then at least you kind of have a starting point that you can have that conversation and do that more consultative selling.
Yep.
That to me is
I love
pretty
having
exciting.
the signals. It makes it so much easier. But that's just the first signal. We're on to the next.
We're going to move on to the next, and that is for the support team and being a bit more proactive. And I think for us, Kate, what we've done in the past is obviously we've pushed a lot of people to support. And this is something that we've talked about a lot, is trying to actually increase the volume of support tickets so that we can talk to our customers more. But this signal's a bit different. And this is
very different.
Can you see a problem coming? And then can you proactively support your customers? What shape does that take? And what would you be looking for in that way? Like if we're doing proactive support and reaching out to people before they reach out to us, what kind of signals are we looking for?
Well, you're looking for account health. You're looking for user health. The collective of the user health is the account health. So again, the question is, and again, we used a product analytics tool, but a lot of people don't make the connection that if you give your customer support people information about how well their users are using your product, and you can get a sense of how much they're engaged and they've adopted, it's amazing how you can actually change your conversation. And so you basically start to do your support because it means that people will feel like they're being understood more. So let me give you an example of that. So you've got a person who asks about a new feature. They can't get their head around the feature. They can't make it work. When you actually get and actually understand who they are and how well they know your product, for example, and for example, they're highly engaged, you can treat them differently because you don't actually have to ask them the dumb questions.
If a support agent can see activity within the product, then you have a much more informed conversation from the start, right? Like you know what they've done, what they haven't done, and where they might be getting stuck. And
are they highly competent users or are they novices? And you talk to people differently, and you actually can be quite preventative too. You can prevent problems before they start. Yeah.
So I think here, this is actually kind of the way that I originally framed this here. We'll touch on it in a minute when we talk about the marketing team. I think that may be a bit more proactive. But I think really what I was thinking when I wrote this down for us to talk about is, not support reaching out to people necessarily at the start.
With discovery questions saying, tell me and it's just such a recipe of, they don't know who I am and how long I've been using this product. And this is quite disappointing to actually be treated like a stranger when you've actually used the product well for a while. So this is just about actually forming a better relationship with the user because you have a better understanding of who they are.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it, right? Is understanding the customer that you're talking to and making them feel like you know what they're going through and basically like just getting to the point a lot faster, really. Because I mean, support,
correct.
We don't go on there to take a long time. So
no,
I think that's it, right? Yeah.
I'm glad we got to it, Pete.
I'm glad we got to it. But the reality is we don't talk in those terms in support. We usually just talk in terms of can we get them off and can we get the tickets running through. So this is a very different type of conversation. But that's for another video, isn't it? Number three. What's number three? Yeah.
Success teams and keeping your customers around. So some of the things that you can look for in your product data at a high level here is just engagement. At an account level, at user levels, can you see churn coming? And if you have a success team, or even if you're on a small team, I think, Kate, that we're all wearing all the hats. Small team, any given minute of the day, I think one of us is in sales, support, success, you name it, whatever. But once you have your customers, you want to keep them. And I think this is one area that, we've had a lot of conversations around where the focus has been on getting more customers instead of keeping the ones that they have. And this to me is one of those really important things that probably doesn't get enough love because it's, I guess, maybe not as sexy to talk about, like, well, we've got them. How do we keep them is not as cool as like top line revenue type. Like we've got a bunch of new people in the funnel. So what are success teams or small teams that are kind of doing that success or account management type role? What signals are you looking for there? I mentioned engagement. What does that mean to you?
Well, again, I like to be able to measure this stuff. So, I do like a good analytics tool. And it's really just actually seeing scores changing over time in the wrong direction. If there are any big events, for example, downloading a large lot of download of files, that's particularly could be very problematic. Would suggest you're almost probably definitely losing them if it is an exit event. But so for me, it's things like adoption, it's not using the system frequently. So if they were using it, 4 out of 7 days and now they're down to 2 out of 7, they haven't tried the new features that have come in and they're just actually creating less stuff in your account, then to me, they're all those signals. So it's about understanding the parameters of what's relatively normal of a healthy account, and then finding your signals of the unhealthy. And then when someone fits that profile, you then investigate further. Now, people are going to say, oh yeah, but the signal might be false. And I go, yeah, of course it can be. But that actually doesn't matter, because even if it's a false signal and there's nothing wrong, that the person's going, oh, we're just working on another project at the moment and we're not using the tool, which has happened to me when I've reached out. It doesn't matter, because it actually just means it's someone you've connected with that person and you've re-established contact. So it's not wasted effort in any shape or form.
Some of the other things I've been thinking about is with respect to like a success type role and churn is like number of active users, right? If you see that go up, great. If you see it start to drop off, that's probably a reason to reach out, re-engage. We talked about the engagement score. That's very high level, but you can kind of drill down and see who's using it. If you can see like those champions that have been using the product a lot, all of a sudden disappear. Again, not a definite bad signal. I've had teammates go on maternity leave, and the trying to remember who it was at Atlassian, one of the products, someone went on maternity leave and of course went completely quiet on this app. And next thing you know, I'm getting emails from our account manager going, oh, like, everything okay? Yeah, it's fine. It's just, your power user isn't here 3 months. So
yeah. There can be lots of different scenarios. Absolutely. I'm
going to move us on now to what we talked about before, the marketing team. And maybe this is sort of what we said before about proactive support. This might be a signal that is a bit more proactive, I suppose. So if you get a good understanding of what a really highly engaged, highly valuable customer, you said you like to go after the big whales, right? So you can find those accounts that are spending a lot of money and highly engaged with you, and you can see that in your product data. That's like gold to marketing and product marketing. And you can identify what your best customers are doing, so you can go out and find more. When you say, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because I also like to link that to the use cases, because that's the thing is, if they're using certain features, then potentially they're using, for example, in the form builder, if they used a lot of conditional logic, then the use cases, and you knew, for example, that, a lot of HR teams, for example, were building onboarding forms, you could then talk about onboarding, but you could actually be razor-like in talking about the problems that they have and how your product solves. And that's where you get people going, oh, and then if you then introduce the concept of such and such solve this, and they go, oh, I'm just like them. So to me, that's quite powerful, Pete. So it's seeing the features, it's seeing the use cases it solves for, and then finding those like-minded souls.
This is where I think it gets really exciting and fun, because you and I have done this a lot, where we've developed a lot of use cases. And going back to the pro forma stuff, that to me was one of the most fun parts of that business, was seeing how people were actually using the form builder, and a few parts to that. So you can actually look at what was happening in the product, but then the part that I think gets ignored a lot is that sort of like that intuition. What am I seeing, and what do I think it means? And I think that's the fun part, where you can kind of start to get creative and think through, what is actually happening here. And then of course you can always reach out to people too and talk to them and ask them that question. So this is where it all starts to tie back together, where if you see someone with a unique use case and they come through support, for example, that's a great time to ask about that. And that's, I think, something that we did well together back then, was linking all of these bits and pieces and these signals back together. But I think it's a really cool point about the use cases and watching to see what people are actually doing, and then turning that back around and sort of projecting it out. So it's something that's
I love really use cases. Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, we're on a smaller team. So we were highly observant to that. And I think that's a really important part of being in business, is being observant to how people and when people are using your product.
Yeah. I agree. And I'm going to use that to segue into the last signal that we have here. And that is for the product team. Go product. Are people using the features that you're building? I think that's the question that we're asking here. And a lot of product teams ask, it's what should I build next? And then is the last thing that I published or hit send on actually being used? Who's using it? How often? What's the adoption rate? All that sort of stuff. So that's another signal that you can get out of your product. I think for us, we were talking about this off camera before, that those are the two sides of that conversation, right? Where I need to know what to build next. And then I'd also really love to know if what we built is having an impact. And I think it's really cool that people are thinking that way. And I think there are signals that you can get out of that. Strictly usage is one, but again, we go back to like engagement here. And what else would you be looking for if you were a PM, Kate?
For me, I think if I was the PM, I'm just so aware how long new features take. So I'm always aware of that real tension between the ones you can do quick and easily and versus the ones that take a lot longer and a lot more expensive to develop. And the question under both of those is the value. So it's very easy to just get in that cycle of you just keep doing the quick wins, the quick wins, the quick wins, and you don't necessarily develop in the places where you need to be developing. So for me, having some oversight into that is pretty critical. And I look back now at our time at Accoil and the things we chose to punch through and develop on when we upgraded. Yeah, with Proforma. Sorry, I'm making an assumption there. Sorry, guys. But, you know, there were things that we thought would make a real impact and they didn't. And that was quite deflating, can I say, when that happened. Because probably we could have pulled out some of the features and no one would have missed it. And indeed, we did have some features actually that weren't working properly and no one said anything to us about it. And really, in the scheme of things, really was like, So, you know, you'd remove something and no one even noticed that you'd removed it.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of one of those things like kill your darlings, you know, just don't be afraid to anyway.
And, you know, this is to your expansion play. You want people to use your product more and more, either use it more or more broadly or get more users or something. And so, so this is just your lifeblood of develop, you know, new features and stuff is your lifeblood. But the reality is don't ignore what's also already in play.
Yeah.
Because it could be that's just a lack of awareness and it's underutilized.
Yeah, so I mean, that's again why we say this all the time on this channel, that, you know, a lot of this is all just a loop, right? So all these signals, feedback through marketing, through sales, you know, what should sales be talking about when they get on the phone? Success the same. What should marketing be promoting in their use cases? All that sort of stuff. So it is a very circular thing here. Yeah. I know it can sound a bit boring and repetitive, but that is just the nature of the game, isn't it? Where you just have to do that work, I think. That's the important part.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to wrap us up here, Kate. We've been blabbering on for a while about this. So I think it's important stuff. It's stuff that we think about when we're building our business here. So the 5 signals that we're talking about today are for 5 different teams. It's, can you prevent churn? Can you convert more customers? Can you understand who you should be selling to and what the use cases are? Who's using your product? And I feel like I'm missing one, but I'm going to leave us on that one.
And how well are they using your product via support?
All right, that's it. That's us for this week. Anything to send us out with, Kate?
I'm just going to say bye, everybody. And of course, more sales to you.
See ya.